Hello there, and welcome to Genealogy Live Interviews, Series 5, Episode 4, which I will admit took a good while to happen because a thing called Project Infant got in the way, we'll say, for that. So, if you're new here, welcome. I you'll be getting the rear end of the series with this, but in short, I'm interviewing names in genealogy and, asking them different things. But this one, or this series, Names and Lights, is about the people who shine through in the community in more than one way. So, without further ado, I want to bring on my fourth guest, Catherine Court Andrew, a genealogist and director of the Hinsdale Historical Society. So, hello, Catherine.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a part of it. So I think we may as well just leap into it. I've been out of this for a while, so let's just get started. So
All right.
for those watching who might necessarily be familiar with you, could you give like an introduction to yourself and how you got started into genealogy?
Yeah, so you know my name. It's Katharine. I am the society manager slash director archivist at the Hinsdale Historical Society outside of Chicago, Illinois. I am also the editor of the National Genealogy Society's monthly publication. So if you're a member there, you get my monthly emails in your inbox. And I run my own genealogy business at KKA Genealogy LLC, as well as I do lectures and speaking and what else am I forgetting? Oh, I wrote a book that was published last summer. um, and I got into genealogy really young. I'm a third generation genealogist. So I grew up with my grandma, who lived in Fort Wayne, taking me to the Allen County Library's Genealogy Center when I went to visit her. Um, my mom and grandma on weekends in Fort Wayne, where a lot of my family history is, would, instead of taking me to the playground, we would go to the cemetery and play find the headstone. So it was really ingrained for me from a kid to just love history, and I knew these stories from my family through my mom and my grandma's research. um, and so I guess like starting around middle school through high school, I started dabbling in genealogy a bit on my own, but only got really serious with it when I was in college. And around that time, I started doing lectures at the public library I was working at as a graphic designer, because nobody else knew on staff how to do genealogy. And I sort of raised my hand. I'm like, I know a little bit. And so that's how I got into the lecture and teaching world. Um, and then everything just sort of grew from there.
Yes, and I know you kind of mentioned a whole load of things in your introduction. Because I
Yeah.
mean, like you have been doing a lot. Like I
Mhm.
remember, like in the WhatsApp group we have, you just sort of like, "Hey, I'm writing a book now," and just sort of giving updates about that. And it was just seeing you going from strength to strength. I just found, oh, it's like what, like the productivity you must be able to function. I can't,
Yeah.
because there are times when it's just like, oh, I'm feeling really productive. I'll actually get something done, and then I go like, no, I don't get half the stuff I want done. So like, I could definitely sense your sort of drive in so like trying to
Mhm.
do everything in genealogy, or well, a fair whack of things.
I
So
mean, there's a lot that I want to do that I just don't have time to do. So, yeah.
yeah, not never enough hours in the day, that's for sure.
No.
So I suppose kind of I suppose I'm probably getting a bit ahead of myself, but I figured I may as well ask it. Like so obviously with obviously your role as the director of the Hinsdale Historical Society, you deal with all sorts of like records, be it like physical or physical records and maybe photos, and even
Mhm.
in your own genealogy. But is there like one that you really love to like delve and work with? Like, would it be records, newspapers, or photos?
So for my own family history, newspapers hands down because
Really?
yes, hands down, because it gives you those like little glimpses into your ancestors' lives or your relatives' lives. So I've found that like a lot of late 1800s to like 1930s newspapers in small town America can be very sassy and have the best little like gossip columns or accounts of people's lives. So hands down for my own family research, it's newspapers. As an archivist, I have a few favorite records that I love to look at and handle. Um, Top of the list would be maps, all sorts of maps. I actually have like an entire Sanborn map collection for the fire insurance right here. So I love these. And let's see. I mean, it's always very interesting as an archivist to get a new donation of items, and it's unsorted and it's likely been sitting in somebody's attic for 20, 30 years, and being able to preserve those records for the future is super exciting. So I don't know, I can't really pick favorites, but maps, vital records, photographs, yeah.
Yeah, and sorry for anyone watching that just saw us just zoom in. I just realized I had the wrong setting on. But no, I mean, it is a. I mean, I really love photos, and kind of on the topic of photos, because
Hmm.
obviously, in my own family, I have like one side there's like loads for, and then like the another part there's like nothing, because like
Hmm.
I've got a set of great grandparents. One died in 65 and one died in 70,
Hmm.
1965 and 70. But uh, no one has any photos of them. And yes, there are plenty of photos of like my dad's father's
Hmm.
parents, so my paternal grandparents' parents. That doesn't make sense. Just kind of little group shots of like
Hmm.
the whole family, because there was like 8 children and the
Hmm.
parents, so it was a big family, and just kind of it was just interesting to see just these big group shots of everyone posing and very
Hmm.
cheery and happy. But I don't think anything could have could have prepared me for like when you kind of sent me uh like a photo.
Yeah.
But like this is a photo. So like for anyone wondering, like I don't know if this person is actually related to me, but like I'll try and see if I can get a zoomed in photo. But there was a kind of a I put the silly hashtag on it now. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I usually come prepared, but ignore that.
That's
But like
okay, don't worry.
I
Yeah.
mean, like comparing that between me and a relatively sort of recent photo,
Yeah.
I like I still can't get over it. But kind of
Yeah.
for anyone wondering, kind of what is this witchcraft? How did you come across the album again? Because obviously people are kind of. I
Oh,
should have also
yeah.
said that came from a photo album that Catherine found.
Yes,
How
it
did
did.
you came across
So,
that?
I am somebody who, when I go, like, thrift shopping or antiquing, I am saving people's family members. So I found this giant photo album at an antique store, um, geez, probably like a year and a half ago, but I hadn't opened it until I like sent you that photo that day. And it's just some family's old photo album, and only a few of the photographs were labeled with their names. But I think they were from Massachusetts or Maryland, and it somehow ended up in like a tiny little vintage shop in Chicago. But yeah, I saw that photo and it was very eerie. I knew I had to send it to you. Yeah.
And like you said, it ended up in. Where did you say you found that
I
photo
got
on
it at
album?
like a vintage shop in Chicago, or it could have been one of my 12:30 in the morning eBay purchases. I don't remember. Yeah.
Oh God, because I mean, like just kind of seeing that was just kind of thinking, wow, like who must he be?
Mhm.
'Cause like the stupid thing is, I can't think as to whether so like where that would even come in because like the furthest my family ever went in America was a New York, and
Mhm.
like one great granddad moved to New Jersey
Mhm.
just to be different.
I
Um,
mean, the person in
but
the photo might not be related to you at all. It's, you see
I,
doppelgangers pop up throughout history. I think there's like photographs of like famous actors and comparing them to like people in like group shots and everything that are online. So it's, yeah, weird doppelganger stuff.
oh yeah, but it's still freaky either way, just seeing that because you're
Yeah.
thinking surely there must be some obvious connection because it looks so much like me. No, uh, maybe
Genetics
one
are
day I might be able
strange.
to. Oh, they are. I mean, I might one day figure out who he is. Like, even if it's not related to me, I just want to know his name. But
Mhm.
I don't even know where to even begin. Yes. Oh
Yeah,
well.
so I started putting what I do, so I save documents, like I said, when I go antiquing or if I find something interesting on eBay, I'll buy it if it's cheap. If it's cheap. um, but like I'll go to like little tiny antique stores around my area, and if I find like baptism certificates or graduation certificates or photographs that have people's names on them, I I take them home with me, and there's been a few where I've been able to identify, like, living family members, and I reached out to them and asked if they wanted the photo back, and some of them have said yes, and so I've been able to reunite the photo with the family, but also I just wanna know more about the people whose stuff is left behind and ends up in my closet.
Yeah. I probably should start trying to do that, but then I kind of think, right, I need someone to put all of the stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm not great at organization, so until I figure
Yeah.
that out, it mightn't happen just yet.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that I have enough because I've got boxes of my own family's things that have been passed down to me, but no, it's never enough for for me, and now I work in this giant archive, so, um, yeah, it's
But
but it's
it
fun.
must be like a fever dream, kind of like working in an archive, because they always kind of seem so interested to kind of work in one, and you're kind of, and the whole, because the whole white gloves while handling stuff is a myth, right?
It's a myth, we don't wear white gloves. Don't wear
There,
white gloves.
you heard it from the archivist. There you go.
Unless
Don't.
the unless unless the archivist tells you to wear white gloves, don't wear white gloves. Please wash your hands and don't use pens. And if you're donating anything to an archive, remove the staples and the rusty paper clips, please. But yeah, no, white gloves is a myth because the gloves, well, it's a myth at least for people who recently in the past 20 years gotten a master's in library science, but it takes away the tactile senses on your fingertips. So when you're handling paper and different materials, it's much easier for you to, you know, not feel that the page is about to rip when you're wearing the gloves. And also the fibers on those gloves, they can stick to the paper and cause it to tear. So yeah.
Well, there
Yay.
you go. That's your PSA for today. Uh,
Library Science 101. There you go. Little factoid.
we're all for learning, so yeah.
Mhm.
So my favorite part is what is an interesting story or event that you found in your family history? Because surely you must have come across one.
Ooh, there's so many. I can okay, so there's two that come to mind. One is very silly, and the other one's like sort of serious. But so my second great grandmother Josephine, she immigrated to America twice from Germany. And researching her has been so inspirational because of what she went through in her life. And also my grandma, her granddaughter is still alive. So I've been able to get her story about how she lost two husbands and multiple children, and then finally found a husband that stayed alive and had four kids, two with a past husband, and re-immigrated into Indiana from Frankfurt and raised an entire family. And so that's always one of my favorite stories. The silly story is, again, from a newspaper. My great-grandfather in Fort Wayne, Indiana, during, I think, the 40s, it was widely reported across multiple newspapers around the Midwest that one day after work, he came to his car and found 100,000 bees on his car. And they had to get an entire beekeeping task force to remove the hive of bees off his car. And it doesn't sound very funny when I say it, but the newspaper clip, I can pull it up actually. It's probably right here, but the newspaper just reads in the most hilarious way. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of other silly little stories like I mean, one of my in-law distant cousins, so not related by marriage, was unfortunately had mental illness, and he was known as the chicken thief of Wells County, Indiana, because his tendency was to steal chickens. And so he was imprisoned over 4 times and sent to multiple asylums, of which he escaped twice, only to go steal like 35 chickens and 3 roosters before getting caught. Which newspapers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a strange one.
Yeah, I mean, you asked for a
Yeah,
story,
I
so
did. I
these
did.
newspapers and inspirational great-grand or second great-grandmothers. Um, yeah,
Well, I mean,
I'm just
weirder stuff has
finding the
happened.
bees. Weirder stuff has definitely happened, though, um, it's always fun when you find it in your own family history.
Yeah, that it is. I mean, I mean, I don't think the insect spray would have worked on the car with a load of bees, so
No.
might have made them
Yeah.
very happy. But I guarantee you, the driver probably wasn't very happy either. So, you know,
Well, so it was his
might have been a
car.
nice.
I'm just finding it, but it's in my tree somewhere. I can send it to you later. Yeah.
But while you're finding that, I mean, it now we've probably kind of touched off this angle already. But what
Mhm.
record do you like the most, and why?
So I like, besides newspapers and maps, I would say what's really useful across all of the client research and also my own family history that I've done is will and probate records. And I guess I would choose that because they really give a very good insight into not just like the family, so the basic vital information, names and how they're related to each other, but also once you go into probate records and estate files, you can, depending on how much there is in each document, you can really get a good glimpse of somebody's life because sometimes they'll have entire inventories of their entire estate. And so it's sort of finding those little context clues and how they lived, how many cows did he will to his great nephew, and like how many, silver place settings did he leave to his daughter, and that sort of thing can give you an interesting look into the like financial situation the family lived in, but also sort of paints a story with like their belongings and who they willed people, or who they willed things to as well, especially if they're not family members, like close friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really had much kind of experience with probate because,
Mm-hmm.
well, they didn't really leave wills. I suppose it was all, oh, we'll pass it down to the eldest son, assuming
Mm-hmm.
they're, still living in Ireland. Because I know you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about my dad's side, most of them, oh, well, a fair lot of them moved abroad. There was only maybe, there was at least one son still in Ireland, and the rest were daughters that were relatively close by. So,
Mm-hmm.
depends on the family, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I never
And
had much
the
luck with
location.
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'm
too.
sure it has to do with the country, and then even sometimes here in the States, it gets down to like state level and then county level. So,
Yeah,
yep.
that'd do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But that's like everything.
yeah, it is. It
Everything
is.
in genealogy is about those locations, and depending on that, you either get records or you're in a burned county and you're sort of out of luck.
Yeah, it definitely does depend. So, for everyone watching at the moment, if you have any questions, please stick them in the chat. Um, and I will try and ask them. So, and actually, one thing I should also step in and mention is that I will be trying to put all these on, streaming platforms like Spotify and whatever ones accommodate video podcasts, because apparently that was a thing that I didn't even know about. So, future ones that haven't been done yet will just be whacked up as a video and left alone. So, they will be done hopefully by the end of the summer. And oh my luck, I'm probably going to contradict myself again. But yeah, I will make another announcement at the end, but I don't want to derail this too much. And my next question for you, Catherine, is what
Mhm.
does genealogy mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think, in a broad sense, genealogy is a more focused way to research history. It's not looking at the broad events, like there was a war or a pandemic or that sort of thing. You're looking at individuals' lives and bringing light to people who may have been forgotten or overlooked in the big history books. In a less broad sense, I think that for individuals, genealogy it can be discovering where you came from. I also think that genealogy doesn't have to necessarily be all about blood relations. So you can pick your family. So I don't want to say it's about discovering your roots, because yeah, we all research our biological family, but that might not be your family. So it's sort of discovering your history, your family's history, whatever kind of family that is, and remembering and preserving. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that summed it up because and I like the bit about picking your family because obviously everyone has different situations and obviously while it
Mhm.
may be sort of a relatively maybe an archaic view of sort of well your family is only your blood relatives, for some people it'll be something entirely different.
Mhm.
So I like how you factored that in.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously, with you and I being young genealogists, and the next generation,
Mhm.
coming in hot. But what advice would you kind of give to someone starting out on the genealogy journey?
Ooh. Well, I've learned a lot. And I've definitely forced my way into well, not forced my way. I've pushed my way into the field. I think what I would say, if I could do it over again, I would be asking professional genealogists a lot more questions. So networking and reaching out to people who are, well known in the field and asking them questions about their specialties, and sort of like the things that you've been asking today. But also, I would say, and I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to put your voice out there. Um, don't don't start your family tree and source only other people's family trees.
Yes,
um,
that's another good PSA for today, I think.
yes. You know, if you can't find a record, look in another record set, reach out to your local libraries and historical societies because they often have archives, and in archives there are usually biography files and photo records and all of those things. So if it's not online, it still might exist. Um, but yeah, I would say to younger people, don't be afraid. If you're passionate about genealogy or history or really anything, follow that passion and don't let something get in your way. Like, don't be discouraged, I guess.
Definitely. And I think a good question to wrap up on,
Mhm.
because again, I'm trying to get better at limiting it, but
Mhm.
still getting a fairly good interview out of it. So with times of changing, more and more young people are getting into and starting their genealogy journey. In your own opinion, do you think that there is enough outlets for young people to connect with people their own age and talk about genealogy? And do you think there are things that might need to change? And if so, what do you think they are?
So,
That's a fairly long question, so
yes.
take that what you will.
um, so I think that there are definitely many ways to connect with other young genealogists. But for people who, I mean, and they're all on social media. So, like, there's the Twitter and then, the hidden branch, uh, Facebook groups, that sort of thing. It can be a little bit hard to find if you don't know what you're looking for. So, that's a little bit of an issue, I guess. But I think the one thing, and it's tangentially related to this question. I think the one thing that needs to change for younger genealogists is we need to embrace them better in the community of professional genealogists. Um, yes, they are young. I'm technically still young, so we are young. Um, but your age, I guess, it doesn't determine how dedicated you are and how passionate you are. You might not have, I mean, we might not have 20 plus years of experience, but we're constantly learning and constantly trying to improve our skills. And so, um, looking for ways to embrace the younger generation that's coming up and with open arms, I think, is something that needs to change.
Definitely, and I think if I think the general community in genealogy can do that, I
Mhm.
think the only way things will go is forward. We're
Mhm.
kind of bringing in change and whatever way that might be, because I'm still shouting from the rooftops for some organizations to use other things that aren't
Mhm.
just hoping that they'll Google you and oh
Mhm.
wow, we found you, sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I mean, we can live and we can hope.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely ways that, societies can embrace younger people. I mean, personally, here at my at Hinsdale, we have a junior board. So we have our board of trustees, and we have a junior board because a high schooler came to us and said, I'm really interested in history and I really want to help the society and do things. And then she got a whole group of people together, and now they help out all the time in the archives and at the museum and with different events because she came up and asked. But I had no idea that there was even people in younger teenagers, high schoolers who would be interested in that. But it's completely opened my mind to that. So, like, that's just one thing that societies might be interested in, is reach out to the high school population, because there's always people who are like I was in high school, history nerds, and would love to help.
Definitely. And I think that's a positive note, to wrap up on, because, I really am trying to, end things on a popular note. But before we do go, so obviously this is episode 4, the final ever series. I don't plan to do another one after this. So I have an idea of who I'm going to bring on next. I'm still toying with it and trying to figure out who best to bring on, but I do know who my finale will be. But the finale will be a little while to go. It'll hopefully be before September. It'll probably maybe be late July, early August. But that guest has said yes, so it will happen. It'll just take some time. But apart from that, that will be all. So thank you everyone for joining in, and I will see you next time.